Good morning, Europe. Welcome to the program. Our top stories for you this hour. Blame game. The political gloves come off in Greece in a deepening row over the deaths of over 90 people in deadly wildfires. And over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
Facebook crackdown as the social media giant takes action against accounts they believe could have been trying to influence US elections.
Holiday interrupted. The UK's Theresa May cuts her break short to meet with France's Emmanuel Macron for crunch Brexit talks. Crisis averted. Meanwhile, on the home front, Emmanuel Macron survives a no-confidence vote over the bodyguard scandal. Mexico plane crash. A plane carrying 103 people has come down at the Mexican city of Durango. All passengers and crews survived. And a real-life heist. Brazen thieves steal Sweden's crown jewels, complete with a speedboat escape. Thank you for starting your morning with us. Our top story this hour. As Greece takes stock following one of its worst ever natural disasters, political infighting is taking center stage in Athens. More than 90 people died in wildfires that gripped the Attica region last week, prompting the opposition to push for snap elections. But for the people of Greece, rebuilding their lives is of paramount importance. And rescue and recovery efforts are still ongoing, as Brian Carter reports.
Just off the shore from Mati, a group of divers is getting ready for an unusual dive. This part of the sea is where dozens of people went missing after the deadly fires. Finding them is the mission of these volunteers. For years now, they have been at the forefront of some of the worst tragedies in Greece. But even then, Mania Bikov, the leader of the group, says the emotional toll is heavy.
We have to go in the water every day and do the best we can, and after, when we go back home, then it's the time that we have to think about our feelings. Now it's a duty. This is the priority.
These divers have been scanning the waters for nearly a week, but to no avail. The Greek Coast Guards who performed the same mission have so far found 8 bodies. With the current, some had drifted several kilometers away from Mati. Back on land in Rafina, homeowners have started applying for a compensation scheme put in place by the government. For each house affected, 5,000 euros will be granted. The people here say they are happy with the help they received.
I honestly don't have any complaints because I think I've gotten all the help that we could get here, and I am thankful, honestly. Food, people coming around, my neighbors, the volunteers.
But in Mati, some of the house owners like Kostas don't believe for a second that the money promised will arrive.
They're saying they're going to give 5,000 euros, which is, I guarantee you, they're not going to give a cent. I'm told now, I know them.
This is what's left of the holiday home that has been in Kostas' family for more than 50 years. According to him, experts visited the home after the fire and said it was still possible to rebuild it, which makes Kostas really angry.
They're trying to convince you and me, looking at this place, there was no destruction. Tell me, this is destruction or just it's in my imagination?
Sorry about the mess. I didn't expect people.
Kostas' neighbor Manolis also has doubts about the government's response, but says he wants to rebuild his family house nevertheless.
It's devastating. Just to see it like this. I can't see it like this. It's horrible. We have to try. I don't know for the future, but we have to try.
There's still a long road ahead for Manolis, Kostas, and many others in their situation to overcome the events that swept away their homes and their belongings in a single evening. It will take time to rebuild the houses, the roads, the electricity, the sewage system. But no matter how long it takes, for the people of Mati, this village will never be the same again.
That was our correspondent, Brian Carter, and he's joining me live now from Mati. Brian, so we saw you there talking to a lot of the people on the ground. Can you tell us more about what they're feeling going through at the moment?
Good morning, Tesa. Well, you heard it in the story. There are still a lot of questions, a lot of anger from some people. Apparently, there are cleaning services going around town saying that they can clean the houses for 3,000 to 4,000 euros. So you can imagine with 5,000 euros, that's barely enough to clean the house, let alone to rebuild it. And a lot of these houses in this area apparently did not have fire insurances. But people here are still talking. Everybody is coming together, sharing their experience, saying where they were on that fateful night, what they were doing, who they know that was killed in these fires. And one psychologist I spoke to said that this is actually really good. This is really part of the healing process. And the more they talk about it, the faster they do it, then the faster the recovery can be as well. And also another discussion going on in Mati, in Rafina, but also in the rest of Greece, is this whole discussion about the austerity measures. Were cuts made to essential services that could have been used to save more people? So all these discussions will probably continue in the next few weeks, in the next few months. But for me, what was really striking is the level of resilience of the people here. People are really saying that they will fight and that they will stand up again after this terrible tragedy. And also really the level of volunteering. I mentioned it in some of the other stories I covered here. People were really helping out each other, whether it's cleaning the houses, distributing food, but really coming together as a community to try to overcome this terrible tragedy.
All right. Thank you for that. Brian Carter there in Mati. Well, our correspondent Faye Dulcari has been following the political fallout from the wildfires, and she's joining me now from Athens. Faye, so the other side of the story clearly is the political fallout. Can you tell us about what's going on at the moment?
So, gloves came off. The war of words between the government and opposition conservatives continued yesterday, and they're going to continue today for sure, with the main opposition leader, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, calling out Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras over the fact that no one has resigned over the last week. Mitsotakis held a press conference yesterday speaking about the wildfires and explaining the position of his party. He pledged that he will do everything he can to find answers to all the questions and make sure that responsibility is attributed. And he actually said that he doesn't understand how some people can sleep at nights. When someone undertakes political responsibility, it should be accompanied by an act. And resignation is what he meant, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. Though he didn't name exactly the Prime Minister, the comments appeared to be aimed at Tsipras, who said that he assumes political responsibility, but he didn't resign. Later, in a statement by the Prime Minister's office, Mitsotakis is accused for trying to take advantage of dozens of citizens' pain and loss. Human lives cannot become an object of political exploitation, is exactly what a statement from the Prime Minister's office said.
And Faye, so how do we see this playing out? I mean, are there calls for any snap election? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, look, political tensions are very high during the last months in Greece. The main opposition has been asking for elections many months now over the financial situation and name dispute with Fyrom. And there are many scenarios for early elections, even more now after the tragedy, as you can understand. I can tell you that the last time this happened in Greece, in 2007, with less dead people, we had elections within a month. Of course, now the circumstances are different, the government is different, the political party in charge is different, and only the Prime Minister really knows when elections are going to be.
Indeed. Okay, for the moment, thank you for that. Faye Dulcari from our Athens bureau. Thanks. And still to come for you on the program, Theresa May will cut short her holiday to continue Brexit talks with Emmanuel Macron at his presidential retreat in the south of France. And Facebook has identified and shut down more accounts it suspects of attempting to influence the American midterm elections. That's after a short break. Your top story in Good Morning Europe. The political gloves have come off in Greece in a deepening row over the deaths of over 90 people after the deadly wildfires. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has accused the opposition of exploiting the disaster. Well, Facebook has taken steps to combat what it is calling coordinated inauthentic behavior after it shut down some more than 24 sites, pages on the site. Alex has been following this story. Alex.
We have, Tessa. Facebook and fake news. Those have been two words that have proved really problematic for the social media giant, which, of course, also owns WhatsApp and Instagram. Well, now Facebook keen to repair their reputation after having a series of adverts on the site which they said fake news is not our friend. Well, they have now taken action against accounts that they say, 32 accounts that they say had coordinated inauthentic behaviour. In other words, these accounts were linking up to try and deceive and mislead users, and they believe, according to Facebook, that this was ahead of the US midterm elections. These accounts trying to sow discord and political distrust in America. Facebook also adding that unlike in 2016 when there were some Russian-backed accounts, this time Facebook saying it was harder to identify who's behind this. Whoever's doing it is concealing themselves more effectively. Let's just show you some of the posts that Facebook released from the accounts they've taken down. These are just some of the posts you can see here. Now, this one here is called Black Elevation, and this one here is a post about consciousness. So there's a variety of topics, but the idea is from these pages, they are being targeted at users who would not know that there is a coordinated group behind them. People would believe these are authentic posts by authentic users and therefore sign up to them, follow them, share them, etc. And that is how we saw a lot of the spread of fake and inflammatory posts in 2016. Well, let's just bring you up some of the numbers that Facebook released about these accounts here. So there were more than 290,000 accounts were following one of the most popular accounts that Facebook took down. So that number includes real users. We obviously can't tell how many of these users might have been other accounts or other fake accounts as well. But more than 9,500 organic posts were created by the accounts that Facebook was taking down. You can see that's prolific posting across both Facebook and Instagram. The accounts ran 150 adverts. This is where a post is paid for to push it further up people's news feeds, and that was paid for in US and Canadian dollars at around $11,000 there. So this is, as you can see, a big problem for Facebook. Also, Facebook saying it wasn't just accounts, they also took down events like this one, which is called No Unite the Right to DC. It's a counter event to Unite the Right. So it's not just right-wing posts, they're really trying to stir up discord with left-wing events as well. Facebook saying they've contacted people who attended this event to tell them it's off. So Facebook here taking action against what they see as fake news, fake accounts. What do you think? Too little, too late? Or is Facebook taking a step in the right direction? Let us know your thoughts using #TheQ.
All right, thanks for that, Alex. Now, British Prime Minister Theresa May is to hold surprise talks with the French President Emmanuel Macron this week in a bid to get him on board with her Brexit plans, cutting her Italian holiday short. That is, Prime Minister May will head to President Macron's holiday home in the south of France later this week. It comes as May and members of her cabinet are on a summer diplomacy tour ahead of October's Crunch Brexit summit. British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt was in Paris this week, where he said that failure to reach a deal would be a tragedy. Well, joining us live now from London is Euronews correspondent Vincent McAviney. Vincent, so the Prime Minister, she is really obviously keen to get Macron on board. Tell us about that.
Well, Tessa, good morning. You might think that Theresa May deserves a bit of a break after the last couple of weeks of turmoil, but she's cutting short her holiday in Lake Garda to travel to the south of France to meet with President Macron. And this is to try to build some kind of consensus on her Brexit plans that she's struggled to build so far here with her own MPs here in the House of Commons. Now, the Prime Minister will travel to Fort de Brégnation, the island retreat that the French president enjoys. We believe that she has invited herself along, but it's not going to be a bit of a Mamma Mia get-together in the sun in the Med. Emmanuel Macron is one of the toughest critics of her proposals for Brexit, so Theresa May is going to be trying to soften his stance on this. And this is the kind of direct approach that she's trying to use to go above the European Commission directly to other leaders to try to get them to unlock the gridlock on her proposals. And Jeremy Hunt, the new Foreign Secretary, is also on an international tour. He was in France yesterday saying the EU needs to evolve its thinking on this and that the no-deal scenario would be problematic for everyone in the EU.
All right. Well, October is fast approaching. I mean, does she have a plan? What's next for her?
Well, Theresa May has a plan. She wants to go back to the Commons in a couple of weeks' time and to her party conference and say to her MPs, look, I've got this many European leaders on side with my plan, I've got these businesses on side, and I've got support around the country. Now, how is she going to do that? We've already seen her going to Northern Ireland to get support for her plan there. She's going to be doing more trips around the UK, but really we'll be seeing more of these kind of trips across Europe. She's already met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel about her plans. She met with Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz last week. to talk about her plans. And we know that Theresa May has one more holiday. We expect she's going to go hill walking in Switzerland again, as she normally does. But she might be popping up on the doors of a couple of other European leaders at their holiday retreats to try to talk Brexit to them. Not what they maybe want to be doing in the heat of August, but Theresa May's got a mission to try and build a consensus behind her plans.
All right. For the moment, thanks for that, Vincent McAviney there in London. Thanks. Now, 3 Russian journalists have been killed in an ambush in the Central African Republic. They were in the country on assignment and traveled outside after dark against their security advice. Russia's foreign ministry expressed condolences to the journalists' families and said that they were working on bringing their bodies home. Iranian officials have said they will not meet with President Trump after he indicated on Tuesday that he was willing to sit down for negotiations between the two countries. Foreign ministry spokesman Bahram Ghasemi said on Monday that there is no possibility for talks, and Washington reveals its untrustworthy nature day by day. Those were his words. Now, President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Iran nuclear deal in May, and sanctions against the country are due to be imposed from next week. 10,000 homes in California remain under threat from wildfires, and 19,000 people have evacuated their homes as firefighters continue to battle blazes that have been burning for over a week. 2 firefighters, a 70-year-old woman and her 2 young great-grandchildren, are known to be among the dead, while 7 others remain missing. Officials say they don't know how long it will take to contain the fires, which have so far burned over 110 acres of land. And still to come for you on the program, 85 people were injured when a passenger jet crashed just after takeoff in the Mexican state of Durango. We'll bring you all the latest pictures. And over in the queue.
The Aquarius NGO ship is preparing to set sail once again after being at the centre of a European storm last time. We'll have the story after a short break.
You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome to the program and thanks for joining us. Now, a passenger plane has crashed just after takeoff in Mexico. Well, remarkably, despite the extent of the damage to the vessel, there were no reported fatalities among the more than 100 people on board. James O'Hagan has the story.
An Air Mexico-operated passenger jet with 101 people on board crashed right after takeoff in the capital of Mexico's Durango state. Amateur footage has emerged showing the plane's destroyed and flaming body, but astonishingly, authorities have said there were no fatalities. However, of the 85 people reportedly injured, 2 are described as being in a critical condition. The Aeromexico flight AM2431 was flying from Guadalupe Victoria International Airport to the capital, Mexico City, when it came down at around 4 p.m. local time. One woman said she and her daughter had managed to escape through a hole in the fuselage. The airport operator attributed the crash to bad weather conditions, citing preliminary reports. The plane had barely taken off when it felt like it was hit by a strong air current, one passenger told Network Televisa. James O'Hagan, Euronews.
Now, the French government has survived 2 parliamentary votes of no confidence over its handling of the Benalla affair. President Macron has been under intense scrutiny after videos emerged of his former bodyguard assaulting members of the public. Now, after weeks of scandal that have reduced Macron's popularity in the polls, the government won both votes with a strong majority. And joining us to tell us more is Stéphane de Vries, who is in Aix-les-Bains. Stéphane, thank you for joining us. So, Macron survived this vote of no confidence, but his popularity has been going down. So was it expected that he would survive this?
Yes, absolutely. And the opposition also knew that the motions had no chance of succeeding, but they wanted to show their disgruntlement. The opposition, since Macron's election last year, has actually been quite silent in the French politics, but also in French media. And now they jumped onto this opportunity of Benalla-gate, the scandal that's shaking up France for the last 2 weeks, to show that they're still there. Quite remarkably, the left and the right, they joined forces. They actually filed 2 motions. The right did not vote for the left, but the left did vote for the right. So it's an interesting combination, actually a sort of coalition of circumstances. But nevertheless, they knew that they were going to lose. But of course, it was a very important sign to President Emmanuel Macron that they're very, very angry with what happened the last couple of weeks.
All right. Well, 2 things. What has this achieved? And has Macron, in fact, reacted to what you say they were trying to do?
Well, one thing that they achieved, but they're probably not going to like it, is that within Macron's party, La République En Marche, which has a huge majority in the assembly, they are very united around Emmanuel Macron. So they basically succeeded in strengthening Macron's party. But nevertheless, Macron, who was elected to renew French politics, he now is ironically saved by these same old-fashioned French institutions that give the French president so much power. And although Macron knows that he has defeated the two motions, he hopes, of course, that everybody will have forgotten Benalagate before the end of the summer. But he also knows that the events of the last 2 weeks will have a lasting impact on his presidency.
Well, yes, Stefan, he can hope, but is Benalagate in fact over, and can he move on from this?
Well, it's not quite over. Of course, the judges are still investigating. 5 people have been indicted, and although the parliament will go on holiday next week, Benalagate is still going on because every day, or at least every couple of days, there are new facts being disclosed about Alexandre Benalla, the guy we're seeing here in this video, the former bodyguard of Emmanuel Macron. And without a doubt, the investigation of the police and the judges will show that there are more dysfunctional, that there's a dysfunctional system at the Élysée, so the presidential palace. So it will continue, but Macron seems very, almost lucid about it. He says, well, the French are not interested in this. They're just interested in having their holidays on the beaches. But I think this will have a lasting impact on his, the remaining 4 years of his presidency.
All right, thank you for that. Stefan de Vries talking to us from Aix-les-Bains. Thanks. Coming up, we'll have a look at all of your top stories, including we'll be back in Greece, where after the wildfires, now it's all about the harsh reality of rebuilding lives and homes. Plus, that tense wait for the results of the Zimbabwe general election. The opposition is accusing the ruling party of trying to rig the votes. And look at this story. This is about a brazen robbery where Sweden's crown jewels got stolen by thieves and they escaped on a motorboat. We'll tell you all about that. But first, today's no comment is from India, where heavy monsoon rains have hit cities in the northern part of the country, causing flooding and landslides and pushing thousands of residents to higher ground. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Your top stories: blame game. The political gloves come off in Greece in a deepening row over the deaths of over 90 people in deadly wildfires. Holiday interrupted. The UK's Theresa May cuts her break short to meet with France's Emmanuel Macron for crunch Brexit talks. Crisis averted. Meanwhile, on the home front, Emmanuel Macron survives a no-confidence vote over the bodyguard scandal. And a real-life heist. Brazen thieves steal Sweden's crown jewels, complete with a speedboat escape. Greece is coming to terms with one of its worst ever natural disasters, but political infighting is taking center stage in Athens. More than 90 people died after wildfires gripped the Attica region last week, prompting the opposition to roundly criticize the government and push for snap elections. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras responded by accusing his rivals of exploiting the situation. But for the people of Greece, rebuilding their lives is of paramount importance, and rescue recovery efforts are still ongoing, as Brian Carter reports.
Just off the shore from Mati, a group of divers is getting ready for an unusual dive. This part of the sea is where dozens of people went missing after the deadly fires. Finding them is the mission of these volunteers. For years now, they have been at the forefront of some of the worst tragedies in Greece. But even then, Mania Bikov, the leader of the group, says the emotional toll is heavy.
We have to go in the water every day and do the best we can, and after, when we go back home, then it's the time that we have to think about our feelings. Now it's a duty. This is the priority.
These divers have been scanning the waters for nearly a week, but to no avail. The Greek Coast Guards who performed the same mission have so far found 8 bodies. With the current, some had drifted several kilometers away from Mati. Back on land in Rafina, homeowners have started applying for a compensation scheme put in place by the government. For each house affected, 5,000 euros will be granted. The people here say they are happy with the help they received.
I honestly don't have any complaints because I think I've gotten all the help that we could get here, and I am thankful, honestly. Food, people coming around, my neighbors, the volunteers.
But in Mati, some of the house owners like Costas don't believe for a second that the money promised will arrive.
They're saying they're going to give 5,000 euros, which is, I guarantee you, they're not going to give a cent. I'm told now, I know them.
This is what's left of the holiday home that has been in Costas' family for more than 50 years. According to him, experts visited the home after the fire and said it was still possible to rebuild it, which makes Costas really angry.
They're trying to convince you and me, looking at this place, there was no destruction. Tell me, this is destruction or just it's in my imagination?
Sorry about the mess. I didn't expect people.
Costas' neighbor Manolis also has doubts about the government's response, but says he wants to rebuild his family house nevertheless.
It's devastating. Just to see it like this. I can't see it like this. It's horrible. We have to try. I don't know for the future, but we have to try.
There is still a long road ahead for Manolis, Costas, and many others in their situation to overcome the events that swept away their homes and their belongings in a single evening. It will take time to rebuild the houses, the roads, the electricity, the sewage system. But no matter how long it takes, for the people of Mati, this village will never be the same again.
That was Brian Carter reporting there from Mati in Greece. Now, Zimbabwe's opposition party is accusing the Election Commission of deliberately delaying the result of this week's general election to favor the ruling party, the ZANU-PF party. Amid increasing tensions, the Movement for Democratic Change has taken the step of claiming victory. Euronews' Evelyn Laverick reports.
Supporters of Zimbabwe's opposition leader Nelson Chamisa take matters into their own hands and claim a premature victory in the country's presidential election. Frustration is growing at the wait for official results in the tight two-horse race. Partial parliamentary results have been released, but the opposition is accusing the Election Commission of delaying the presidential outcome in favour of the ruling party. On social media, incumbent President Emmerson Mnangagwa expressed confidence in his chances, adding he was waiting patiently for official results as per the Constitution. Earlier, his rival Nelson Chamisa had also tweeted, but he said he was poised for victory and he was ready to form the next government. The Election Commission has urged voters to be patient, denying allegations of ballot rigging.
There was no rigging, and we would like to assure the Zimbabwean people that we as the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission will not steal their choice of leaders. We will not subvert their will.
Concerns that frustrations could boil over were evident at the deployment of police and water cannon outside the opposition MDC Alliance's headquarters. Inside the building, an opposition official was not mincing his words.
I wanted to find out if we will protect this vote. People of Zimbabwe have waited for so long, patiently. They've resisted the temptation of taking up unlawful and unconstitutional means of achieving change.
President Mnangagwa and the ruling ZANU-PF have said they will accept the outcome if Chamisa wins. But after a string of questionable elections under ousted President Robert Mugabe, many Zimbabweans remain sceptical. Evelyn Laverick, Euronews.
And joining us live now from Zimbabwe is Pindai Dube, a journalist from our sister channel, Africa News. Thank you very much for joining us, Pindai. So the opposition, Nelson Chamisa's supporters, they say that they're already claiming victory, but, we don't have official results yet. When can we expect that?
Yes, what is happening right now is that there is counting of all the results, but we have the parliamentary results so far, but they haven't finished. They've been announced since last night, and ZANU-PF is leading the parliamentary by 110 against the MDC's 40. And the MDC supporters have also gathered, they've been gathered since last night at their headquarters, saying that they feel that the they won in the presidential elections, and they feel ZANU-PF is cheating through the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission.
Well, Pinda, it's been peaceful so far, but we can feel that there is an expectation that Chamisa, the opposition, did very well. So if the ruling party is declared the winner, do you think the peaceful reaction would continue?
Yes, not exactly, because the MDC, you remember when MDC President Nelson Chamisa was campaigning, he promised that if ZANU-PF wins, if ZANU-PF cheats, and they've that feeling that the ZANU-PF cheated. So they said if ZANU-PF cheats, they're going into the streets. And they believe the only result is that they've won. This is due to the economic meltdown in Zimbabwe. They don't believe ZANU-PF can win where there is no medicines in hospital, unemployment is 90%, and there is no cash in banks. People are sleeping in the banks. So I think there will be protests by the opposition.
All right, thank you for that. Pindai Dube, journalist from our sister channel, African News. Thank you. And so, to come on the program, the number of heat waves could rise sharply around the world unless governments take action. We'll take a look at the latest research. And over in the queue,
a royal robbery. We'll have the latest as Sweden's crown jewels have been stolen. But first, a short break.
Your top story on Good Morning Europe. The political gloves have come off in Greece in a deepening row over the deaths of over 90 people after the deadly wildfires. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has accused the opposition of exploiting the disaster. Now, a family reunification law which comes into force in Germany today will allow migrants already living in the country to apply to bring their family members over to live with them. Well, the act is seen as a compromise between the parties in government, but has drawn substantive criticism over the number of applications allowed, as well as the length of the legal process involved. Well, joining me from Berlin is our correspondent Jessica Saltz. Jessica, so do tell us about this law and why it's important.
Well, this new law is for subsidiary status migrants living in Germany. Now, asylum seekers are granted subsidiary protection in Germany if they themselves are not facing direct threat or persecution in their homeland, but they could face danger if they were to return, for example, if there's an ongoing civil war there. So there's currently around 200,000 beneficiaries of subsidiary protection in Germany. These are mostly Syrian. It means that their asylum is not indefinite in Germany and that they are ultimately expected to go home to their homeland if and when it is declared safe. But until today, these subsidiary status migrants were not allowed to bring family members to come and join them in Germany. But from today, 1,000 family members in total per month will be allowed to come to Germany. And this after a debate between the governing parties, the Social Democrats and Conservatives. It was something the Social Democrats demanded as a condition for joining the government. But for humanitarian and asylum groups that are pro-migrant, they say that this number of 1,000 family members a month is too low and ultimately quite arbitrary. It's not the humanitarian solution. And according to an immigration lawyer I spoke to, he said that this is also going to be incredibly slow, legal and bureaucratic. So the process is expected to take quite a long time, and it's faced a lot of criticism from both sides. Of course, the far-right anti-migrant group, the Alternative for Germany, the political party, would like to see fewer migrants coming to Germany. So really, this law hasn't pleased either side of parties and groups on either side of the migration debate.
All right, thank you for that, Jessica Saltz reporting there from Berlin. Now, the NGO ship Aquarius, it is preparing to restart its search and rescue operation, that is. This boat was at the center of that migration row in Europe after Italy and Malta refused it entry. Alex, what's the latest on this?
Tessa, you remember last time the Aquarius, pictured here, operated by SOS Mediterranee, was at the centre of a political storm in Europe after rescuing hundreds of migrants but having the ports of Italy and Malta shut. Well, today, the charity saying the ship is going to set sail once again. But it's unclear under what conditions. They're going to tell us more details a bit later in the morning. Last time, you remember that there were 8 days at sea with over 600 people on board. We were on board. We had exclusive coverage from our correspondent, Annalise Borges, who told the full story of those people. Eventually, they were accepted into Valencia in Spain. This pictures some of the scenes, people hugging, cheering, whooping when Spain accepted them when Italy and Malta had not. It went global. And this tweet from MSF Australia, Médecins Sans Frontières Australia, saying that the Aquarius became a symbol of Europe's failure to agree on migration policy. Well, Spain here showing openness and willingness to accept the ship, but now is facing some of the same political questions we've seen appearing in Greece and in Italy. Let's just show you the situation at some of the numbers. This is the number of people arriving to Spain by boat this year compared to last year. This line on the top is 2018. This line here, 2017. More than 9,000 more people have arrived in Spain up to mid-July this year compared to last year. This spike in this 2-month period, the country's Interior Ministry told us, was due to a number of factors, but that included Italy and Greece shutting their ports and taking a harder stance. So Spain, for the first time, according to the UN agency, is also taking in more people than Italy is. So Spain being seen now as the destination for irregular migration in Europe. And that is raising tough political questions. The leader of the opposition party accusing the government of creating a pull factor to Spain by allowing the Aquarius in. Over the weekend, he said it's not politically correct, but we have to say we cannot create a sustainable migration system for all the millions of people who want to come here. Now, the government rejected that, saying actually it was the previous government who left them with the situation to deal with. But you can see here the kind of fiery political rhetoric between the parties now reflecting the situation we've seen in other European countries. Spain, the latest to raise these questions. So what do you think? Should Europe as a whole be taking a tougher stance, or are countries starting to see crueler, less humane arguments creeping in? You can let us know your thoughts. We want to hear all voices. Use #TheCube in your comments.
All right, thanks for that, Alex. Now to South Africa. It's forging ahead with plans to change the constitution to allow for land to be expropriated without compensation. The country's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who took office after Jacob Zuma resigned earlier this year, says that the ruling African National Congress will push to get the move through parliament. Well, the lingering pace of land reform has caused anger in the country since the end of the apartheid era. And correspondent Alistair Sanford is joining us now. Alistair, I think the question here is, why is this such a contentious issue?
Well, Tessa, the background to this is that back in the apartheid era, in fact, dating back from more than a century ago, many black people were dispossessed of their land. And yet 25 years after the end of apartheid, much of the land remains, especially the best quality land, remains in the hands of white people. After 1994, the ANC brought in a voluntary scheme known as willing seller, willing buyer. The idea was the government would buy up land to redistribute to black people. And yet there's been incredibly slow progress on this. The target was for something like 30% of that land to be redistributed. Only around 10% actually has. Land and agriculture are very important in South Africa, and the economy has been performing extremely poorly. Unemployment is extremely high, 27% according to the latest figures. President Ramaphosa went on TV last night saying this move now to change the constitution, which has been mooted for some time, this is what they want to do, and particularly this measure to allow land to be expropriated without compensation. That's the highly contentious issue. That's the measure that's seen as targeting white farmers in particular.
All right, so what could this lead to? I mean, could there be a lot more reaction to this?
It has been very contentious. Of course, it conjures up images of a Zimbabwe-type situation where we saw in years past white farmers being forced from their land. The government says it's not about land grabbing. There's a certain amount of optimism, despite increasing conflicts over this. There's a certain amount of optimism amongst farmers and amongst business that this can work, that land has been transferred successfully. There's a lot of criticism saying that it may be counterproductive and you may actually see black people being forced off their land because they have actually been acquiring land. The government says it's going to push ahead with it. There's this big stimulus package for the economy as well. It won't necessarily get through Parliament, though. And a lot depends on the reaction in the coming days, particularly from South Africa's international investors.
All right, thanks for the analysis. Alistair Sanford, thanks. And still to come for you on the program, a royal heist. We'll have the latest on the robbery of Sweden's crown jewels. But first, let's take a break. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back to the program. Now, we have seen some very extreme weather in recent weeks with scorching, record-breaking temperatures from Japan to the UK. Well, today, the first global study to predict future heat wave-related deaths is being published. The publication concludes that deaths caused by severe heat waves will increase dramatically in tropical and subtropical regions, followed closely by Australia, Europe, and the United States. A key finding shows that from 2031 onwards, there could be a 471% increase in fatalities in 3 Australian cities: Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. And now joining us live from Melbourne, Australia, is the study's lead author, Professor Yuming Guo. Professor Guo, thanks for joining us on the program. But first of all, we'd like to point out that this report is based on a lot of conjecture, isn't it? But if your conclusions are right, what would it mean for people and who would be hardest hit?
That means, the people should put effort to protect themselves from heat wave. For example, they should stay at home with air conditions and drink more water in the heat wave days. And also, the government should put more money to this area to push the study for climate change science and climate change and health.
If you look at what's happening, as we were saying earlier, there's been a lot of wildfires, the temperatures are just record-breaking, it's very hot. Do you think this is going to be a continuing trend?
Yes, absolutely. Many studies have shown that future temperature will increase a lot, and wildfires will be more frequent than current days.
All right, and in the conclusions that you said, these are, again, based on if we don't change where we are going, now this is what is going to happen. So concretely, what do you think should be changed now, maybe in terms of policy, in terms of what's being done?
If we don't change anything, there will be change. There will be increased heat wave days and increased temperature in the future. But if we put some effort in this area to mitigate climate change and make people adapt to heat waves, the heat wave-related deaths will decrease. Will still increase, but the increase will be smaller than those with not adaptation and mitigation.
All right. Can you just briefly tell us, Professor Guo, which parts of the world do you think really would be hardest hit?
The subtropical and tropical areas should be put more effort to look after their people and mitigate climate change.
All right. Thank you, Professor Yuming Guo. There, Australia's, it's a lead study author of that report on the environment. Thank you. Now, police in Sweden are searching from some very brazen robbers who stole Sweden's crown jewels. This sounds like it's something from a movie. Alex, tell us about it.
Doesn't it just, Tessa? A jewellery heist, a royal robbery. People are calling it all sorts. Well, this is from the Facebook page of the cathedral. It shows the items that have been stolen. 2 crowns and a royal orb. They were stolen from displays which were open to the public, but the cathedral saying these were alarmed and locked displays. So whoever's behind this heist has obviously scouted the joint. They've gone in, as you might see in a movie, and stolen priceless pieces of Sweden's history here. Now, in a statement on police report, they showed this image here, which shows the jewels in situ. The items stolen being these 2 crowns and this orb. There are other items pictured here, but these are the ones confirmed stolen. You can see here how they are displayed to the public. The police saying the thieves made a getaway in a motorboat, and after the police did pursue them, trying to catch them, at the moment, nobody has been captured and nobody's been held responsible for this theft. So, seen as a very brazen robbery, stealing some of Sweden's most priceless historic treasures from a cathedral and an escape in a boat. You can understand how this is getting people talking. Well, local people, we've been looking at the local Facebook group. This cathedral just west of Stockholm. In the local Facebook community, people there responding with a mix of anger, speculation, and here, really quite extraordinarily strong sentiment, saying that execution is the only possible punishment for a crime like this, attacking the country's heritage. Other people, though, saying that no one from Sweden would have done this. It's got to be someone from outside. So this idea that this is really a crime, not just against the jewels in history, but actually against an element of Swedish identity. The suggestion here, no Swedish person could have been behind it. People on Twitter as well commenting on this. And this one, I think, sums up what a lot of people are saying, that second to violence against humans and animals, it's when people go after history. That's what really upsets people. It's not just that expensive items have been stolen here, but historic items have been stolen as well. So at the moment, there is no update on what has happened to these priceless historic jewels after they were stolen from that cathedral west of Stockholm. Police appealing for information. The search goes on, and we'll have the latest for you as and when it happens, as I'm sure you'll be very keen to know, as we all are, what's happened to these priceless relics. Tessa.
I'm certainly keen. It's a fascinating story. Thank you for that, Alex and the Cube team. And thank you for joining us on Good Morning Europe. Do stay with Euronews and Euronews.com for all of your top stories. In the meantime, we will leave you with today's No Comment from Thailand, where a football field has been created in a floating fishing village off the island of Koh Phangan.